Hello, everyone who's just joining us. If you are joining us and would like the interpretation in Spanish, there is an interpretation button at the bottom of our screen here that you can click to listen in Spanish. Hola a todos. Para accesar la traducción, le pueden hacer clic al botón de interpretación en el fondo de la pantalla y luego seleccionar español. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. So, hi everyone, and welcome to NCW Virtual Reads. My name is Belen. I work here at Wenatchee Public Library, and we are so thrilled to have Chicago-based author Erika Sánchez here tonight to talk about her book, I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. This is part of our NCW Virtual Reads program. Throughout NCW Reads, we hope to engage everyone across the 5 counties and 30 libraries that we serve with a book that sparks conversation, curiosity, and learning. We believe stories have the power to expand our perspective of the world, bridging our differences by highlighting how much of the human experience we all share. By joining us today, you are helping us fulfill our mission to connect the people of NCW to the vital resources and opportunities that foster individual growth and strengthen communities. So thank you for being here. There will be a Q&A session after the presentation. If you have any questions at all, please submit them through the chat at any point during the presentation. Tonight, you have the option of listening to this program in Spanish. Our wonderful translator, Claudia, will be facilitating a translation of Erika's interview. To access this translation, please click the interpretation button at the bottom of the screen and then select Spanish. Esta presentación también estará en español. Nuestra traductora Claudia estará facilitando la traducción de la entrevista con Erika. Para accesar la traducción, le puede hacer clic en el botón de interpretación en el fondo de la pantalla y luego seleccionar español. Finally, this evening's program is brought to you in part with Wenatchee Valley College. We are so thankful every time we have the opportunity to partner with WVC. We want to give a special thank you to Vanessa Saldivar. Vanessa is the inaugural director of HSI initiatives at Wenatchee Valley College. She was born in Zacatecas, Mexico, and migrated with her family to the U.S. when she was just 1 month old. Her experiences growing up undocumented in a mixed-status family in rural Oregon sparked her unrelenting passion for human rights and social justice. After getting degrees in social work and migration studies, Vanessa spent over a decade serving immigrant and refugee communities in numerous settings and sectors across the country from Washington, D.C. to the borderlands. After a 30-year struggle with the U.S.'s broken immigration system, she became a citizen and now considers herself Mexican-American. Please welcome Vanessa.
Thank you, Belen. And hello, everyone. Feel free to use your reactions. It's hard, I know, on virtual programs to feel like we're together. So just do what you need to do to thank you, Luz, to feel like we are in community, because we are. So buenas tardes. Thank you again to Alicia and Claudia for the opportunity to moderate this discussion. As you heard, I'm the director of HSI initiatives at Wenatchee Valley College, our local community college. And for those that aren't familiar, it is our community college serving 3 central Washington counties and the Colville Reservation. In 2016, WVC was designated a Hispanic serving institution by the U.S. Department of Education, signifying that it was serving at least 25% Latina students. And today, WVC continues to be a proud HSI, and 51% of our students identify as Latina. As the director of HSI initiatives, I oversee initiatives aimed at closing achievement gaps, impacting Latina students, and making our campus a more culturally responsive and affirming place for all our students. The book that we are about to talk about is about a young woman who dreams of going to college, but there are so many things in her way. In reading this book, I couldn't help but see so many of our students in Julia. So I am thrilled to be here supporting this event and uplifting this very special book. And so with that, it is my honor to introduce our esteemed guest. Erika Sánchez is a Mexican-American writer from Chicago whose debut young adult novel, I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, has been a #1 New York Times bestseller, a National Book Awards finalist, and has received the Tomas Rivera Award. Time magazine has recognized it as one of the best YA novels of all time. It is now being made into a film directed by America Ferrera and adapted into several theater productions. Most recently, Erika published a critically acclaimed memoir titled Crying in the Bathroom, which has also won several awards. Erika earned a BA from UIC and an MFA from the University of New Mexico. Her books have been translated and published in countries including Korea, Taiwan, United Kingdom, Brazil, France, Mexico, Poland, Turkey, and Italy. She's appeared on WGN, PBS, NPR, Good Morning America, Telemundo, Univision, and MSNBC. Erika holds an honorary doctorate in humane letters from New School University. She lives in Chicago with her family. Please join me in welcoming Erika L. Sanchez. And again, feel free to use your reactions. Thank you. Welcome, Erika.
Thank you so much. I, I'm just perpetually stunned that people come to my events and they go out of their way to attend something of mine. I'm just like, wow, okay, thank you, everyone. um, so you know, I thought I was reading from Crying in the Bathroom, and so if it's okay with you, if I could read a little portion of that. It's kind of Crying in the Bathroom, I feel, is like the sequel to Mexican Daughter in a way, like loosely. Imagine someone like Julia grows up and is like a hot mess for a really long time, you
I
know?
love that. Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, so it's me trying to find my way. That's really what this book was. Um, and so I've been thinking a lot about beauty standards, and just how much women are controlled by them, and how much I think I'm above it, but then I'm not, you know. And so I was thinking of this particular chapter and crying in the bathroom. Do you think I'm pretty? Circle yes or no. And I'm gonna just read just a couple of pages about just me pondering about beauty, and what does that even mean? Paradigms of beauty are neither innate nor arbitrary. As Naomi Wolf explains, standards of beauty are driven by politics that uphold male supremacy. The beauty myth is not about beauty at all, she writes. It's about men's institutions of power. Beauty standards are essentially about control, specifically controlling women's bodies and consequently our behavior. If women are consumed by the desire for physical perfection, they are more likely to fixate on meeting the standard and much less likely to challenge whence it came, the patriarchy. My aesthetic phase as a teenager didn't last long. I wasn't cut out for such austerity. If I'm honest with myself, part of me was not brave enough to lose the capital that my physical appearance granted me. I was well aware of the privilege of being pretty. I liked it. Sometimes the benefits were subtle and unspoken, and sometimes they were so blatant, it was staggering. When my head was shaved, people were often cold and unfriendly. Men didn't scramble to open doors for me. Strangers were often confused about my gender, and that made them uncomfortable. Sometimes people were openly hostile. I once went into a pizza place to order a slice, and the cashier laughed in my face. I tried to extinguish the part of me that valued my appearance, but I was unable to. The world is kinder to you when you look the way it wants you to look. Countless studies have shown that attractive people earn more money. In my late 20s and early 30s, my regard for my own beauty was so outsized that I'd cry and hold myself up in my apartment for days at a time whenever I had bouts of severe acne. I couldn't stand being perceived as anything less than pretty. I still can't. I know that part of the privilege I hold is due in part of being a young and attractive woman. Part of me is ashamed, and another part of me accepts that this is the consequence of living in a world where a woman's worth is inextricably attached to her appearance. Maybe beauty can be a weapon. Maybe I'm a fool. Um, thank you. I haven't
Thank
ever read that one out loud before, so it was interesting.
Well, that's really great that it's like a little preview to what comes after I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. And I can very much hear Julia in that um, prose. So I'm really
That's
excited.
nice.
Yeah. um, I'm really excited to present you with some questions and some things that as I was reading the book, I was pondering and would just yeah, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on. So one of the first things that stood out to me about I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter was the way that you used language. I immediately noticed that Julia was speaking my most dominant language, which is English with Spanish lovingly and at times haphazardly sprinkled in. And it, it immediately drew me in and it made me feel like I was talking with my feisty prima from Chicago, which I had several feisty primas from Chicago.
Ah, you're feisty over here. I don't know why.
And I was from rural Oregon, so they were like, they were feisty. So I'd love to know just the significance of Spanish for Julia, for the story, and also for yourself in your own life.
Yeah, I really wanted to capture the the bigness of being bilingual, of how when you have access to two different worlds like that, there's just so many ways to express yourself. And I think some of the best art is made from that. Um, and I think oftentimes growing up, we were told not to speak Spanish at school. And there was very much this judgment whenever we did speak Spanish. And so there was like a shame associated to it. And as I grew up, I just realized how amazing it was to have these two languages at my disposal. And when I created Julia, I wanted her to embody like the messiness, the bigness, the weirdness of holding those two worlds inside. Like, what does that sound like? It's sometimes it's vulgar and messy and weird and funny, and I think that so many of us live in that space, the in between spaces, um and I wanted to show how beautiful it was, and through the writing, of course, like and the poetry of the way she speaks at times. I wanted that to just come through, and I wanted to honor like where I'm from and how we speak and all the crazy shit we talk, and like I I I love that. I was like some punk from Cicero, like I hated it. It was miserable, but like now I'm like that shit was hard. Like I feel like I deserve like some credit. And I'm proud of the way that we communicate with each other. Even if other people don't understand it, it's like, well, that doesn't even matter, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, it really did immediately kind of feel comfortable. And so I definitely appreciated that. Um, so I read the English book, which is how you wrote it.
Yeah.
And as we just talked about, there's Spanish sprinkled in, and I'm curious how you decided what to keep in Spanish when you were writing this English book, because there's in some ways I love that it's just kind of randomly sprinkled in because you don't know. That's how you're right, like that's how it comes out, that's how we're thinking. And
Yeah.
it's but I'm just wondering if you had like how you decided what was going to stay in English in Spanish. And I have three examples that I feel like you consistently used in Spanish, which are mija,
Mhm.
malcriada, and pesado. So
Uh,
just yeah.
yeah, because that can't really be translated, you know? Like mija is like, well, how can you there's no equivalent. So I had to use it. It felt really important. It's just a word that is so familiar and that is there's a lot of affection there.
Mm,
And it's not like hun or like sweetie. It's just not. And
yeah.
so you're saying you're calling someone your child, right? Mija. And so anyway, there's just certain words can't be translated, and I there's so many words in other languages that I wish I could learn, but and sometimes I try to, the concept at least, but there's just no equivalent in English. And the other pesado is like, I just think it's funny to call someone heavy, like a heavy spirit, like, oh, like what a drag, you know? And what was the other one?
Malcriada.
Malcriada. Again, no translation. It's like some smart ass girl who doesn't do what she's told, which is what I've been my entire life. And so it felt like the girls that I'm speaking to through this book, they know what I'm talking about when I say that word. You know,
Totally.
it's a language. Um, I don't know of. It's like an intimacy with the reader. Like
Hmm.
those who don't get it. That's fine. But those who do, they feel like comforted by that because when have they ever read something like that before? I mean, maybe they have, but I mean, there are plenty of writers. But when I was growing up, I didn't have it. I didn't have anything like this. And so
Hmm.
that's that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And like
I mean,
no italics because it's just I don't, that's not how I think. That's not
yep.
how she thinks. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved that. Um, and it was comforting. So that's great.
Yeah.
Um, a few more questions about language. Like I said, it was one of the first things that I was really excited about. Um, as we heard in your bio, your books have been translated and published in many different countries, including this beautiful bilingual edition that I have with the English and Spanish in one. Um,
Tell you
I'm
that I
curious,
still don't have that one,
you
and
still don't have it?
I don't know who to yell at, but
Well, it says
yeah,
Barnes and Noble exclusive edition. So maybe take it up with
yeah.
Barnes and Noble.
Well, someone's gonna hear about it. That's all I know.
It's a great edition.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so I'd love to know what the translation process was like for the Spanish version, because as we just talked about, your English version is so beautifully and intentionally crafted with these Spanish. And I mean, I'm curious, I want to read the Spanish version now, but I'm just wondering what the process was like of that translation, and were you involved, and um, how did you maintain that same bicultural, bilingual style of
Yeah.
thought?
You know, I'm gonna be honest, like I was by the time the bilingual book came around, I was like not like I was just not in the place to even go there, for many different reasons. And so I really wasn't involved. And I think from going forward, I'm gonna change that, and I do want to be involved and have a lot more say, and all that. But like, I think when it all went down, I was like just incapable of doing
Mhm.
it. And so I was like, either, I mean, just do it, is essentially what I said. And yeah, I don't know. Like, part of me is sometimes is afraid to read it. Um, I read parts, right? It's not that I
Mhm.
haven't read anything, but it's a weird thing to see your work turned.
Mhm.
Like, it's so different. Spanish is so weird.
Mhm.
Spanish varies so much. And so
Mhm.
um yeah, I don't think I was ready to like really tackle that. And so I think now I am with this next project. I'm like, yes, this is
Yeah.
important, but
Well, in
yeah, it
some
really
ways
kind of
it's,
freaked me out.
yeah. Well, in some ways it's like this extra emotional work that bilingual authors have to do, because if you think about it, if you're just an English monolingual author, you just
Mhm.
somebody's translating it and it's going out and you never have to check it because it's not, you don't have those
Yeah, yeah,
abilities.
like the Chinese or the Taiwanese version. I'm like, I don't know. I guess they did a
Right,
good job.
right.
I
Yeah,
hope so.
right. But when it's your language, then it becomes this extra burden to try to make it
Mhm.
something. So yeah, I was curious about that.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a complicated thing.
for sure. My last questions about language are a little different. But in chapter 2, Julia uses the word illegal to describe her parents.
Mhm.
I'm wondering why you felt it was important for her to use that term, or if you felt like if it was intentional, why, or instead of another, like a term that is more commonplace nowadays, like undocumented.
Right. That was the term that I always heard growing up, and it takes place later, but I felt like I needed to capture that sort of sentiment, that language like says so much about how she feels about herself and how she
Hmm.
feels about everything, like it's not um hmm it's I think there are moments of Julia revealing some self-hatred, and maybe that
Hmm.
was one, and there are parts of her that hate being Mexican. Um and yeah, I didn't want her ever to be like an easy character. And I think she says a lot of stuff that is pretty wild, and um it's it was intentional in that I wanted to create this character who is really wrestling with so many different things.
Hmm.
Um and so yeah, that was why I chose to do that. But like, would I ever say such a thing? Like, never, but like when you're writing fiction, you write according to what you think the character would say.
Hmm.
And it's fucked up what she says. But like, what does that say to us as the reader, you know? So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does reveal a bit more about her character and even her arc, that that's one of the earlier chapters, and she does go on a journey and
Yeah.
does some self-discovery. And I think maybe she would, maybe hopefully like long term, maybe not in this book, or in the
Sure.
future, Julia would
Yeah.
see her family differently, would not carry that that label for herself and her family.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are some really ugly parts to Julia, and I I feel like we all have ugly parts, and I really wanted to show what that could look like, like
Mhm.
what I wanted to create someone who is complicated, and
Yeah.
I think that it was achieved. I mean, she's a little shit sometimes, honestly. Like, I yeah, I created her, and I see at many points I'm like, oh, what a little fucker! Like, oh my god, like just shut up. Um, so anyway, she's me, but she's not me. That's what I always say about her.
Um, well, yeah. Uh, Shifting a little bit. So, I'm coming at you from a local community college in Washington. And I mentioned that more than half of our students are Latine, many children of immigrants. So I kind of want to shift to talk about education, and a big shout out to any students out there. I did put up your posters around campus, and so I'm hoping that some of our students have tuned in. Um, but anyway, just talking about education, you you've shared in past interviews, and you just mentioned that Julia is not you. So the story is not autobiographical, but you do have a lot in common with Julia. Um, could you share some similarities between you and Julia when it comes to your relationship with education?
Oh, so interesting. Oh man. I mean, in high school, I was so disillusioned with the education that I was receiving, and it pissed me off. When I learned, for instance, that a teacher was a Republican, because I was like, I knew what that meant, and I just I I was mad all the time because there were so many things that were taught and said that I thought were like just deeply fucked up, um and I was the only one who cared about it. It felt like, to me, I was just like always outraged, and because I felt like we deserved better than that. And I used to go to the Oak Park Public Library, which is the next town over, very rich, very nice, very white. And I used to go over there because their library was amazing. Ours was terrible. And so like and also I used I'm not proud of this, but this just shows like what I was like. I used to steal books because I couldn't afford them, and I wanted them, and I wanted so much to read, and the library was bad, and so like her insatiable desire for like learning and creativity is the same one I had. So like that spirit is the same.
Mhm.
Um and I think it's yeah, I just think that like why can't we have nice things? Why can't we just have schools that we can go to, like in Chicago, there's this system where you can like opt out of your neighborhood school and go to another school, and it's just like such a nightmare to even think about, just navigating all that. And it's like, why can't my kid just go down the street? Like, why does it have to be so hard? And it just and it's always racial because we're a country that is that was founded on slavery essentially and genocide. And so it's just so deep. It's like, oh my God. I don't know. It gets me all worked up. But yeah, she and I are we're outraged by the same shit. I think.
Um, some, so early in the book, we meet Mr. Ingman, and that's Julia's English teacher who encourages her to pursue her passion for writing. I was wondering if you can unpack Mr. Ingman's character and his relationship with Julia and just share why was it important for you to have him in her corner? Because he doesn't play he kind of plays a peripheral, like he's kind of in the peripheral, but he's also important to Julia. So yeah, just
Yeah. Well, growing up, I all but one teacher, yeah, everyone was white. And so like I for me to look for role models, it had to be one of my white teachers. And I had um like three or four teachers that changed me and that saw me and encouraged me and thought I was talented and would give me resources and tell me about poetry readings in the city and let me borrow books and let me borrow music and like these teachers went out of their way for me and I always remember them. And I wanted to write a character that was kind of an amalgam, um, but also kind of watered down because I didn't want Mr. Inman to be dominating this narrative about a brown girl, right? And so like, yeah, he's cool and he helps her out, but like he's not a savior. He's just not. And and so yeah this character was like in honor of the teachers that in many ways saved me, who like really saw something in me that my family did not, or anyone else for that matter. And so yeah, I credit them with so much. And in fact, at my 40th birthday party, my teacher from freshman year history, she was here and it was it was awesome. So cool. I still like keep in touch with a couple. So yeah, I really wanted Mr. Ingman to be like a like a good dude because she doesn't
yeah,
have a lot, you know.
yeah.
Uh, but he's also not gonna like make everything better, right?
hmm hmm And I understand that you're a teacher now, an educator.
Well, I was,
Oh,
yeah.
you were, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a long story.
well, oh goodness, are you still there? Okay. Um, I was just kind of wondering what, how your experiences as a Mexican American daughter of immigrants, and you know, we know we have a lot of similarities to Julia, how those experiences informed the way you taught or the way that you showed up for your students
Oh
and
man.
when you were an educator.
Oh, well, first of all, I loved teaching. It was so fun. A ton of work and it like kind of took over my mind a lot, but what getting in there and talking to these young people about these texts, talking to them about like the times we're living in and trying to teach them critical thinking and like making them feel safe so they could open up and like we would have these incredible class discussions because I would cultivate trust with them and like openness and vulnerability and share things about myself, so
Mm,
to kind of invite them to um share something that maybe they wouldn't. And it was really cool. Um, and and when I mean, I don't even want to get into this story, but like when my contract wasn't renewed, I was like, what? Like I'm amazing at this. Like I knew it in my heart. I was like, this is
Mm,
you're wrong. You are wrong.
mm,
And there was like basically 6% Latina faculty,
mhm,
and they wanted to make it a Spanish serving institution, and
mm,
they got, they didn't renew my contract. It was just like so bizarre. Um,
mm,
but anyway, teaching, just like have compassion, like that. Just being a lonely young adult, not knowing anything or where to turn, like that experience made me available
mhm,
to my students, and made me like invested, like I cared about how they felt, and I cared about what
mhm.
they were thinking. And anyway, I'm sure I'll return to teaching at some point, but yeah,
I
it
hope
was
so.
yeah, it was really just, I don't know, it really did something for me. Like it
Yeah,
healed me because I didn't have that.
yeah. Well, definitely. I feel like I could talk about this for a whole hour. But I'm very passionate about diversifying faculty across, across colleges and universities. Um,
Uh,
it's so important, and it is a problem across the country, even
it's
at
huge.
Hispanic serving institutions. So yeah, trying really hard not to go too deep into this because it's a part of my job too. I'm the director
Yeah.
of the initiatives, and so um, I do have two more themes that I'm hoping to touch on.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so I kind of want to shift to the topic of place. Your book takes place in two different, very significant places, Chicago and Los Ojos.
Mhm.
So I was wondering if you could just talk about the significance of place in this story for you.
Yeah. I grew up going to Mexico as a kid, um, for a couple of weeks at a time. And for me, this this was like the highlight of my childhood, to go back to the motherland and to see the place that made my parents and my people, and to like run around in the streets without a care in the world. And it used to be so safe. And um it's ironic that the place that my parents fled was a place that made me feel like most alive. And so yeah, just being a kid and experiencing like the big sky, the stars, the mountains, it really shaped me. And I wanted to honor that sort of feeling. And I think a lot of uh, people like me have this feeling when they go back to Mexico, like there something has been restored, right? And so and for Julia, she she's restored there, and and her family helps her heal. And the landscape is very beautiful, and there's a possibility of love again. And so yeah, I wanted to capture that sort of magical feeling of going back to the homeland. And yeah, I mean, I've never lived in Mexico, but like I feel it. Like it's embedded in me. And it's kind of a strange feeling to be in a place that is not your home, but you feel somewhat at home. You feel like you belong there. Um, it's pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I I was just getting emotional hearing you talk about it because I so hear that and feel that. I think I got that sense through the book too. So it was just yeah, and also the tension between the places is something that I felt significant because I really feel that tug of war between the two places where I'm from, which is Oregon in the US and Tlachichila in Mexico, and this kind of feeling of tension and tug of war. So what do you what do you think these places mean to Julia, and how do they factor into her arc as a character?
Yeah. I think Julia, when she returns to Mexico, she she sees the beauty of being Mexican. Like she had forgotten it because there was so much trauma. And so when she returned to this place that created her parents, there's a part of her that feels restored. There's closure. There there's a like a return. Um, and so I think that part of the book is really important because that's when like a major shift happens for her, and and she changes the way that she sees the world and her family and herself. And I think that that's really like a beautiful thing to have, to like have this experience that clarifies things for you,
Yeah.
just because you feel at home in this place. It's cool.
Mhm. I'm looking at the time and I'm so sad. We're not going to get to all my questions, so we'll have to schedule another time because these are like burning questions that I have. So the last few questions, the theme of family secrets was strong, and it was kind of central to the book, and it resonated. Um, so there's just so many layers of secrets that Julia is navigating in this book. Towards the end, she is really struggling with what to do with the secrets that she's holding, whether to tell or not to tell. What do you believe about family secrets like the ones that Julia is holding on to? And do you think she should keep them buried or if she should let them see the light of day?
It's hard for me as the author to say what she should do, but I think that family secrets are um are really poisonous, and we I think people can pretend that something didn't happen, but it still
Mhm.
happened, and it needs to be discussed. It needs to be aired out. And I mean, that's just what I feel as a person. Like let's not pretend shit doesn't exist because it's just not good for anybody. Well, maybe it's good for the person who did harm. But like I don't want to live in that sort of world. I want the truth to always be paramount. And so I believe that, but like I I don't think that Julia had the capacity to share that and like deal with the consequences of that. Like it was unsafe for her to do
Mhm.
so. It would have created so much. And she's also thinking I'm protecting my family.
Mhm.
And so yeah, yeah, family secrets. Like I they're always terrible. I mean, they're never good secrets.
Mhm. Yeah,
So I'm all about exposing them for sure.
yeah. I had a good friend that would say the secrets that keep you sick. So that
Yeah,
sounds like what you're
it's true.
describing. Mhm. Um, well, here's a little lighter one. When I read that Olga was pregnant, my jaw hit the floor. It was felt like
Yes,
it was straight out of a telenovela. So,
yes.
why did you decide to write this twist? And were you influenced by novelas?
I mean, how could I not be? I grew up with them always around. I didn't really watch them myself very much, but they were on
Yeah.
for hours, you know? And I think perhaps that seeped in. And I think they're funny, you know, and I think they t- they teach me about um how to keep the audience interested, the reader interested. And I wanted it to be surprising but not like completely incredulous, right?
Mhm.
And so it was like it was a fun task for me to just like reveal it in this way, like subtle hints perhaps, and then this reveal. I wanted the reader to think something was going on, and
Mhm.
um, and yeah, I mean, I can be dramatic myself as a person. So sometimes my writing is dramatic, and I find that really fun to do.
Yeah. Well, something else that was dramatic but more heavy was the secret, Ama and Abbas secret about what happened to them at the border, which was
Right.
truly horrifying. And
Yeah.
yet we know that it's a common occurrence at the
Yeah.
border. So it
Mhm.
was just extra gut wrenching. Why was it important to you to include this as part of Olga or as part of her mom's story?
I've been around senoras my whole life, and um and now as an adult, I've interviewed a lot, and what I find is that there is so much trauma every time. Like
Mhm.
I it's just unbelievable the amount of trauma that women experience, and then they just keep living and they keep just doing things. Like, how do you even do that? And so I I felt like, yeah, I had to include that sexual violence because it's such a common occurrence. And like we don't think about it over here, I don't think. I mean, I do because, you know, that is relevant to me, but I don't think people understand what happens, and um what it's like for women, on the border or otherwise. Like femicides in Mexico, I don't know the statistics right now, but they're really horrifying.
Mhm.
Women are killed all the time by their partners, by strangers, by just a number of people. And so for me as a Mexican woman, like I think about that a lot, and that there are women who look like me and they're being assaulted crossing the border, or um you know, going to work, or just walking down the street, or it haunts me. and and that's why it's in the book, because like I can't
Mhm.
get over it.
Mhm. Well, I have time for one more and I'm pushing it. So I'm just going to squeeze one last question before I take a few questions from the audience, and I want to end on a hopeful and inspiring note. So while Julia is in, so no pressure, but just while Julia is in Mexico, she finds out that her Appa is a talented artist, and that he had given that part of himself up to fulfill his obligations as a husband and a father. What would you say to immigrants and children of immigrants who want to reconnect with their own creativity and do something like write or create art?
Oh my God, what a great question. Writing that really broke my heart too, about how he was an artist and then not an artist. And I think a lot of people extinguish their spirit, their creativity, because life is so fucking impossible. And like, where is the time or the space to do such a thing? And I think that yes, capitalism makes it so that it's really hard to express oneself, and have the time to, like, make things or write or do music of some kind. And it's it's almost impossible, but it's not if you like prioritize the thing that makes you feel alive. And that whatever that is, like, is gonna give you energy. It's gonna make you feel good about yourself. It's gonna make you feel excited. I don't know. So it's easy to say, like, no, I don't have time. But I think it's brave to say, no, I will make time somewhere. I could doodle a little bit at my desk, or while I'm waiting for whatever, anything to make you connected to that part of who you are. Because once you kill that creativity, I think, like, you, something is gone, like, from your spirit. Um and I just find a way, like, play with your kids, like, draw with them, like, cheap stuff. I make collages out of, like, newspaper or magazine cuttings. um Instead of watching TV, like, do some art. So that's my advice. I know it's hard, but it's like the alternative is worse, is what I think. When you stomp that out, like, man, that's sad.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. That advice was totally for, I'm sure, a lot of people, but very much to me too. So thank you. It has been wonderful to hear your answers. And we do have a few minutes for questions from the audience, and it looked like there were some coming in. I think the first one that I saw was from Craig. Craig, if you would like to unmute and ask your question.
Thank you. I just am delighted. I'm up here in Winthrop. We had a little viewing party, and
Aw.
as a librarian, I've watched the book banning issues, and
Mhm.
traveling through Western Colorado this summer, I saw that you were doing public events around the book banning issue, and I wonder if you could take a moment to speak about how that issue has called to you, because I appreciate the work you've been doing.
Thank you. I never in my life imagined that I would have to defend my book in this way. It's so bizarre to me that people are so disturbed by a book about a young Mexican girl. Um, to me, it seems that people are not often don't even read the book, but they're upset by the concept of it. And that we exist, and that we're on the cover of a book, and that Mexicans in the title, all of that jazz. And so that just like shows me how xenophobic our country still is. And I find that really disappointing. Um, what my book has been banned in so many different places that I have lost track, in fact. And I participated in a documentary about banned books. I've done different events throughout the years. I'm actually about to be part of a lawsuit. What we're suing a state that has banned our books. It's me and other writers, and I don't think it's public yet, so I can't say much more than that. But I'm on top of it because it is such a scary phenomenon. Like I keep going back to the Nazis. Like book banning is fascist. It's dangerous. They, these conservative people don't want us to know the truth. They don't want us to um, learn about different kinds of people. They don't want children to get ideas about being queer, like just really, really ignorant stuff. It makes me really sad to think that there are kids out there who would benefit greatly from these books, and they're not getting them because some asshole decided that it was like improper or immoral when it, it's just it's preposterous. It's just so preposterous. um anyway. Just
Thank
I get all
you.
worked up.
Well, as Craig says in the chat, thank you for staying on top of the fight against book banning and xenophobia.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question. One came in from Veronica. I can read it. So she put it in the chat. What advice would you give upcoming writers that are interested in writing a book?
Okay. I think that you should really think of yourself as a reader first. That to me is how we learn how to write. And so if it just you need to read all across the genres and read deeply and carefully and see how other authors have managed to pull something off. Like that always excites me to see like, oh, how did this person do that? um and so for me, books are my teachers. And also, form a community of people. Like if there are other writers out there, wherever you live, I'm sure of it. And so why not connect and feel less alone, because writing is a very solitary thing a lot of the time. And so find your fellow weirdos. That's what I have done, and it's made me really happy.
All right. Well, sadly, we have to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Erika. It's been absolutely wonderful.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to pass it to Belen to close out.
Thank you, Erica. And thank you, Vanessa, for such a great conversation. We appreciate your time, and special thank you to our translator, Claudia, who solo missioned the whole thing. We appreciate you so much. Remember, Erica's books are available in print and digital format through NCW libraries. Also, you can pick up your copies at our region's local bookstores, including a Book for All Seasons in Leavenworth and a Trails End bookstore in Winthrop. Thank you again, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.